Hello friends, you're with the Lonesome Gamer, and today I'm playing 1849, Game of Sicilian Railways by Federico Villani. And it is published by All Aboard Games. And they are starting now a line of products in mass production, and this is going to be one of those games. So this is actually one of the 18xx games that will be actually available. Okay. So let's have a short look at the components. We have here a map of Sicily, and what shines out is the difficult terrain. You can see most of the hexes are actually mountain hexes. All these red symbols here, these are all different mountain hexes. Only here at the coast areas there are no mountains, and even sometimes there are actually. We have here stock market, a 2D stock market. We have a bunch of tokens for the companies. These are bonds that the companies may issue. Shares. Up here, as you can see, we have only six companies, only these six. These are the directors' shares. They are separated and they form an extra stack. And what's kind of interesting in this game, the companies will come out exactly in this order. So that's an important factor here. They are shuffled any time during the game, so this is randomized. That's kind of an interesting feature. We have here the trains. Player 8. The bank, which starts with 7,760. Company sheets. These are markers. They're from they're not well, basically overall this is a print and play copy, by the way. These are markers from another game from Genesis. I'm going to use them to mark the terrain. You're going to see why. This is pretty helpful in this game. And then we have here all the tiles, and you can see a lot of them. There are a lot of them here, and actually, for example, here the city tiles. These are actually different city tiles. So this is not even a stack for every type of tile, but because there's so many different types, I just kind of sorted them. And for example, we have different gauges in this game. So basically this should be 2 stacks, but yeah, this is getting then I don't have the space to really build a stack for every single type of tile. Okay. As in 1830, the game starts with a private auction, and I say that every time. I don't explain the 18xx rules here in detail. I basically only explain the differences of this specific game compared to 1830. And you can check out my 1830 video to get the basic rules for 18xx, or there are lots of other videos, I guess. So let's have a closer look at the private companies here. There is the Società Corriere Etne, and a corporation cannot build in the Acci Reale hex until this company is either eliminated or bought by any corporation. Okay, so it basically simply blocks a hex, and that hex is right here. We have the Studio di Ingegneria Giuseppe Incorpora. So it's an engineering company. The owning corporation can lay or upgrade standard gauge track at half cost. So this is already shown here, the cost then. And of course these corporations also pay a revenue. The Compagnia Navale Mediterranea, the owning corporation, can place the plus Lira 20 token on any port. This action closes the company, but the corporation adds $20 to the port's revenue until the end of the game. Okay. Società Marittima Siciliana. The owning corporation can place a tile and a token on a coastal city, even if not connected to a railhead. This action closes the company and is made instead of the regular track laying and token laying steps. Okay. And most expensive one is the Reale Società d'Affari. The owner of this company takes the first president's certificate, sets the initial market value at 68 or 100, puts a token on the appropriate base city, takes the initial treasury of the corporation minus the token fee, closes when the corporation buys the trade. Okay, so you basically get a presidency, which is similar to the B&O. Okay. So, as we've already seen, the companies come out in a predetermined order. I just want to show you, for example, where the first company will start, which is kind of important because of this, the Reale Società d'Affari. So the question, do you even want that company, or is it a bad starting company or something, is definitely an interesting point. But also, it makes sense to check out which companies, in which order the companies will start. Because, for example, if you want to start a company in the first operating round or in the first stock round, yeah, it makes sense to know at what time the companies are available. So let's take a quick look here at the map before we actually start the auction of the privates. There are not too many cities on the map. The richest city is Palermo. That goes up, I think, to... wait a minute. That goes up to 130. So that is a lot of money. And especially in this game where money is really tight. Then we have here Catania, which is also a very rich city. Goes up to 90. This area is also interesting. Messina, I think, goes up to 80. And then this is here, Calabria is 90. So, yeah, the overall area is pretty rich too. Now let's see where the starting points are for the different companies. We have here, the first company that comes out is the SFA. And it starts here, down there. I mean, it can make a quick connection to here. Well, more, yeah. It could not operate in the first operating round, actually, because it first has to place a token here, or tile here, and then it takes 2 more tile placements to go here. The other option would be to head towards Palermo, but that takes even a little longer, and you gotta cut through the mountains here. You might of course also go west, but that's even further away. Okay, then the next company would be the CTL, which starts here on the left, on the western part of the island. I think that's not a bad situation. They're already connected right away, and then it's not too far from Palermo, but on the other hand, they're a little bit isolated, so they might be forced to work alone at the beginning. Maybe they can somehow make a deal with the president of the SFA and they can kind of work together, try to get a connection here, but I don't know if that's going to happen. The third company to start is the IFT, and that's the problem. The IFT is a really bad company at the beginning of the game because it is really isolated over here. Yellow track is already placed, and it's a standard gauge track. So if you want to go here, you got to pay humongous terrain cost. This is 40 bucks, this is 160, and so to get this connection done to this city here, you already have to pay 200. If you want to go here, for example, you got to pay 280 only for terrain cost. That's really insane. Later in the game, this is a pretty good company because it can make a connection to Messina, a quick connection there. Problem is though, you need an upgrade to do so, and that is gonna be, yeah, the green upgrade. You can place the tile here, and then you have that connection here. But this only works if this company is purchased. So this guy here might simply say, I want to block this space, and then you're cut off, and the company will only close when the brown tiles come out. And the problem is you also cannot go downward because there is no connection on that green tile to go south. So this is a really issue, and you really got to check this out at the beginning of the game. You should tell other players if they don't know this, hey, really, you should check out these tiles because you might get stuck there pretty bad. As I said toward the end, it's a good company because it goes up to 90. This city, it's the second best city on the map, and you can make these quick connections up here, also down here. There's a rich port here. So this isn't too bad, but not at the start. So we might actually see a situation where only the first two companies get started, and then people might be hesitating, not willing to start that company here. I'm not sure how I can handle that issue. The next company then is the ATA, which also isn't the greatest company. It starts down here at Siracusa. But it's not a disaster. It's okay. You can make your way here. I mean, that costs you quite a bit, but because it's narrow gauge, the terrain cost isn't that high, and yeah, you can make a connection to here. It's not that great either. You are a little isolated here in the corner, but at least I think it's better than this one here. The next one is the RCS, and that is a good company. It's maybe the best because it starts in Palermo, and yeah, Palermo alone is worth 50 at the beginning of the game. They can make a connection to here. They can make a connection to here and to the center. Usually then this is already or often connected to other cities. So that is usually a very good starting, a very good company. And we have then the AFG. Now that one is an interesting one because this company may start in any city which does not have a starting location for another company. So that means basically they can choose to either start here in the center, down there, here, or up there. So that is that's definitely an interesting company, and especially now toward the end of the game, or it's not toward the end of the game, but yeah, during a later stage in the game, they can simply place their token on a city which is already really good connected. So yeah, I think people will really try to get this directorship. But as I said, we got to work our way through the stack, and yeah, the IFT might be a problem. To avoid this situation that you have to, yeah, that you are basically in the situation, okay, I can now choose to start a crappy company or no company at all. You got to be either first or second after the auction of the private companies. Now, I thought about this, if there is a way to influence that, to influence your position. I don't think there is a way. Oh, wait a minute, there is actually 25 bucks missing here. I don't think there is a way at the beginning of the auction. Maybe if you react, you can at least improve your odds. I think an early pass definitely gives you better chances. So maybe saying, okay, I try to place a bid on one of these expensive companies, and then I pass early, and in that way I might have a chance to be first or second in priority. Well, technically you have to be first in priority, because the guy who buys this will actually get the first presidency. So if you want to start that company, you have to be first in priority after the initial stock round. Otherwise, yeah, you have to face this IFT issue. That makes this company even more interesting for players, because it guarantees you to start a solid company at the beginning of the game. So we might actually see some really high bids on that. I could imagine that. Another thing, if you don't manage to get this one here at least allows you to kind of start somewhere else, I think. I mean, you have to place a starting token still here, but then, oh, wait a second, I'm not sure. Yeah, then I can actually place a tile and a token on a coastal city. So if things go wrong and I end up, if I have this company, I can actually start that one and then try to go somewhere else, for example here, and yeah, simply kind of improve my position from there. So I'm not stuck here in this bad starting position. If I have this one, it might be also possible to start that one, because then once the green tiles come out, I'm at least allowed to build toward Messina, because I control this area basically. Okay, during this private auction I use a die and usually randomize that, of course, giving odds to some more attractive companies. So we have now here 3 people bidding on that one, 2 people bidding on that one, only 1 bid placed on this one and this one. So basically this guy came up with that strategy that he said, okay, I'm not going to go on that, I'm not going to bid for that company, but instead I'm going to bid for this company here, which allows me to get a tile placement and a token placement on any city. And in addition, he has bid on this company here with the reduced terrain cost, so that's kind of interesting for him. Now this guy activated the cascade, so he will buy the Società Corriere Etne for 20 bucks. I think it's not necessarily a bad move, because it gives him a private company. He controls that space. He only has 2 rivals when bidding for this one here, because this guy, well, obviously didn't bid for it yet. And in addition to that, one of his rivals is going to have to buy this one here for 75, and the other one might go into bidding war for this one here. So there's a good chance that he might have the most money left, and then he has a good chance to get this one. And if not, he holds this company here, which at least will allow him then to move out north if he ends up starting the IFT. So that means now that this engineering company goes for a really cheap price to this guy here, only 50 bucks. That's a pretty good deal, I think. That's a useful company for major corporations to hold. This one here goes to this guy. For 80. Not sure how good that is, but I think it's not terrible. By the way, priority is sitting now here. And now, between these two, there'll be an auction for the Marittima Siciliana. So that was actually an interesting auction between these two players. He ended up getting it for 160 bucks. That's a lot of money. It really is. But he absolutely needed it. Because, yeah, as I said, that's the one that allows you to basically jump out if you end up with this company. And that's exactly the position where he is at. Because the priority deal is sitting here. So he is now in the position that he can simply start the Lilibeo, right? And so he has access to a good company. For him, it's not that terribly important to get that one. But then after the Lilibeo, we come to the IFT. So he was really willing to pay a ton of money for this Società Marittima Siciliana. And now we will see the bidding over this one here. Of course, it is possible that this guy gets it, although I don't think so, to be honest. But he might definitely go to 200 bucks, because this is basically where you can set your starting value. So you will get 2 shares for that company. So 200 bucks is definitely what you can pay for it without losing any money. And then he might as well let it go and simply start then the CTL, which is definitely a solid company. So something kind of unexpected happened. I was pretty sure that one of these three players would end up with the company. Because he's got priority, well, actually, this guy wasn't bidding, right? But one of these one of these two players would end up with the company. But this guy here, although he had priority and therefore knew he could start a good company, for some reason he was really willing to grab this one. I'm not totally sure why. I think his main intention was to increase the price for the other players. But what happened was that, and that's really interesting, this guy realized, okay, if I pay, we were at about 230 or something for that company. So he said, if I pay 230 for the company, I have 75 bucks left. If I start then the company for 100 bucks, which is basically what I have to do if I don't want to lose a ton of money, because I get 2 shares in exchange for my 200 bucks, for my 230 bucks. So if I started for 68, it would be pretty much a disaster. So the thing is, I only have then 75 bucks left, which does not allow me to buy a 3rd share. That means, for example, this guy who's sitting on, I don't know, 350 or so, because he only purchased that cheap company here, he then could steal the company from me. So that would have been pretty bad. The other aspect was, because this guy was basically the last one that was doing the auction with him. It was between these two. The other aspect why he then said, no, I'm not willing to continue here, was he's realizing that this guy only has 150 bucks. He could now start a company for 68, but if he does that, he will be able to steal the company from him. And if he's even interested, because a company for 68, it's a risky thing in this game. We get to this a little later. So that means if he now starts the SFA, there is a chance this guy might not even start a company at all, and then I'll get the chance to start the CTL. If he starts the company, I'll be able to steal the presidency away from him. So there are 2 good reasons why I actually wasn't too eager to pay that much money for this private company here. So that means now this guy can start the SFA. So starting a company works different here than in 1830. This is a partial increment, a partial capitalization. So basically, the money that you pay for shares goes immediately into the treasury of the company. And then anytime you buy a share out of and the shares also go into the treasury. And anytime you buy a share out of the treasury, the money goes into the treasury, except instead of into the bank. But the company will not receive any additional money from the bank as it does in 1830 with the full capitalization. So, yeah, that's what happened here now. We have 200 bucks here in the treasury now, because we bought these 2 shares, and we can choose a starting price. Now during the yellow phase, you can choose 68 or 100. Later in the game, you can go up to 216 when the brown tiles are out. This is the starting price, so the price for a single certificate. There is no par price, so you don't buy something like if you buy from the treasury, you always pay the par price. This is not the case here. You always trade shares for the actual market value. So then these shares go into the treasury, and now we have to buy the tokens. That's also kind of special. Each company has a different price for the 3 tokens. Here you have to buy 40 bucks, pay 40 bucks. This company here has to pay 90 bucks for all its 3 tokens. So, and you got to do that right away. So now we have to pay 40 bucks, which means we now have only 160 in our treasury, and we get our 2 tokens. One of them is already placed on the map. This is our starting token. Okay. Now usually when you start a company, at that exact point you get the option to buy up to 2 more shares, so up to 40% right away with the same action of the stock round. I think this is not possible if you do it here, because it doesn't say that. It says you takes the presidency, choose a starting price, puts the token on the base city, takes the initial treasury minus the token fee, and that's it. So I think it's not possible for him to do that. But usually if you start a company, the president may buy up to 40% of the company immediately with the first action. So now the stock round continues, and it's this guy now. Well, that's kind of interesting. Does he want to start a company? That would be the Lily Bale, or not. Well, we already said that. I can only start my company at 68 bucks. And if I do so, then the other players will be able to steal that company from me. So I might not actually be willing to start a company. Especially, the thing is in this game, starting a company low, at a low price is a very risky choice. Here's why. Let's imagine you started at 68. Other players may also invest in the company. Let's imagine other players buy 3 shares overall, 30%. In the next operating round, they might, well, in the first operating round, you cannot operate, so you go back to 59, right? In the following stock round, players will have the option to sell shares. Well, they would lose money if they do so. So let's assume they don't, okay? So you have another operating round goes back to 68, and let's assume then players are willing to sell the shares because they receive the revenue once, and they don't lose money if they do that now. So if they sell shares, let's say 3 shares are out, the share value would drop to 45. Okay? If by the end of the stock round there should be shares in the bank pool, which would be kind of likely in that situation, the share value will drop even further, which brings it then to 36. So that means the shares that you have left in your company, which might be 3 or 4 shares depending on how much you invested at the very beginning, are only worth 36 bucks each. That's a disaster. It really is. That will cost you a lot of money, and trains in this game are expensive. So that's the thing, if you start a company low, there's a very high risk that other people will trash your shares, and in that partial capitalization game here, this is really a bad situation where you don't want to end up in. Of course, what you could do is, if the share value ends up here, you can close the company. So that could be an interesting strategy, that you say, okay, I'm gonna on purpose start a company low, especially if I already have a second company, or if I already have another company, I can start a second company on a low value, 68. I don't know, buy 60%, and then in the next operating round, sell 40%. The share value drops down, I don't know, to somewhere here, and then I don't pay out for two operating rounds, and then basically the company is closed. I could do that and transfer the starting money of that company here, which might be, I don't know, something like $400 or something like that, into my other company, and in that way I might lose a few bucks, but I could get a lot of money into my other company. That is an option. It could be an interesting strategy, but I think it doesn't make sense to do that at the very beginning of the game, when you don't have, when that is your main company that you want to start with. So he's got now this interesting choice. Does he want to pass, or does he want to invest in another company? Well, I think he wants to pass for now. He doesn't see a reason to give other companies more money than what's necessary, and after the first operating round, the share value will drop. So you then can still buy the shares, and the company of the enemy gets a little less money. So I think that makes sense. This guy, he has now the option to start the Lily Bayo, and he can do it at, not quite at $100. Yeah, shit. Okay, that sucks. So that's now the question. Does he want to start it? I mean, he could start it at 100, but then he cannot buy a third share. He's $5 short, which means this guy has a chance to steal the company from him. Does he want to do it anyway? Yeah, he didn't really think that through. He thought, okay, if this guy is not starting a company, I get the chance to start the Lily Bayo, but of course this guy has even more money than I do. I think I'm gonna pass too, because I'm now basically in the same situation as this guy. He is interested in doing it. There is no reason for him not to. He starts the Lily Bayo at $100. I mean, of course, he could take that risk and start it at 68. Now that is the thing, right? He could do that. He can't afford, let me see, can he afford 4 shares? Okay, so here's the interesting point now. The guy could start the company for 68. We already said this is a risky undertaking, but it might still be an option. The thing is that, and that is also kind of special in this game, there is a so-called last share here, which is worth 20% of the company. And that means, that's kind of interesting, if I buy and I can afford 40% if I started at 68. So I'm sitting then on 40%. Now I thought, okay, this guy has more money than I do, so he can again still steal the company from me. And what's the difference if I started for 100 or if I started for 68? Well, the difference is, if I started for 68, he doesn't have the money to buy 60% of the company. He only has the money to buy 50%, which means he cannot steal the company because he's not able to buy that last share. That means he also ends up with 40%, and I still have control over that company. So that's an interesting aspect here. At least I'm pretty sure about that. He holds 300. Yeah, that's about 350. And if I started at, well, about 70, 6 times 70 is 42, right? Yeah, so he doesn't have that. But 28 is 4 times 70. That's what we both have. So yeah, but we both could afford 40%. He could afford 50, but not the 60. So therefore, it could be an option to start it at 68. But as we said, there's a very high risk that my shares will be trashed. So this is now the thing. Do I want my own company right now or not? Do I want to wait? That's really a tough call. It really is. Because I don't have the option. I basically don't have the option to start that company here at the moment. I don't have a good private company. I don't control this hex, and I can also not make that jump out. So starting that company is probably a pretty bad idea for me. Therefore, if I now say, hey, I'm not going to start that company, I have to wait till this one goes away, and then I'm going to end up with this company, the ATA, which is also kind of a questionable investment, right? I mean, at least I got that harbor, which gives me a plus 20. So let me see if yeah, when the green tiles come out, I'm fine. I can go here, for example, make that an 80 harbor. That would be awesome. So that would be okay for me. But starting the blue is not really an option. So yeah, it's a tough choice here. Do I want to start the CTL for low value, or wait and hope that I can start, for example, the ATA a little later in the game? I think I'm going to roll a die on that. On a 1 to 3, I'm going to start the ATA, this CTL. And I'm not. I'm going to pass. And yeah, maybe that's a better decision. It's hard to tell. This obviously gives him now the option to start the CTL, and he does that for $100. So he buys the presidency, and the money goes up, of course, into the treasury, and he buys immediately another share. So that means he's sitting now on oh, wait a minute. He's sitting now on 30% of the CTL. $40. have to be paid for the tokens. Our starting place is here. Two tokens go into the company. One token is placed on the stock market. Okay, fine. This guy buys another SFA. He passes, he's out of money too, and he also passes, so that means priority is here. And we'll see our first operating round. First thing we do is got to place a tile, and we have here a terrain cost of 40 bucks. So that means we got to take one of these yellow city tiles here. Okay, so I can make a choice between these three tiles. Basically, I can... The thing is, now we have here the standard gauge and a narrow gauge. And every yellow city comes like this. You have one exit standard gauge, one exit narrow gauge. As I said, the narrow gauge, I don't know if I said that, but the narrow gauge, if you lay a tile narrow gauge, your terrain cost is reduced to a quarter. That's a lot of money sometimes, you know. We're talking about sometimes up to 160 bucks, 80 bucks, 40 bucks. These are basically your three values. So it can be a lot of money. The problem is, if you run trains, you have hex trains in this game. So basically, the trains don't count the stops, but they count the hexes you enter. Okay? So you might say they have simply movement points. For example, this train has 4 movement points, and whenever he enters a hex on a standard gauge, he pays 1 movement point. But if he enters a hex on a narrow gauge, he has to pay 2 movement points. So basically you can only go half the distance when you use narrow gauge. So I would say we have, I think I don't want to use, I don't want to build that track. I think that's not terribly interesting. I think it's a good idea to go here, Terra Nova. That allows me a quick connection here. The other option would be to go to that one here, Caltanissetta. If I go here, I'm able to yeah, no, it still takes me at least 3 tile placements to get there. Here will also take me 3 tile placements because that is also pre-printed, is already pre-printed. So it doesn't make such a big difference. I could think about maybe, now the idea is that for example, I could place a tile like, wait a minute. yeah, I could, for example, place this tile here, okay? And in that way, I could move on a standard gauge down here. I don't have to pay terrain cost for these. And I could use a narrow gauge here. And yeah, that is okay because I have to pay terrain cost there anyway. The other interesting option would be to go right away toward Palermo, which gives me 50 bucks. And later, clearly more. If I do that, though, I need a few additional tile placements. For example, I could go to Palermo instead of going here, which means I need 2 more tile placements, but I also get a much higher reward out of this. And here I have the option, I could lay this thing, again go here in a standard gauge and then a narrow gauge toward Palermo. The other choice, and I mean that seems a little crazy, but I might even do it the other way and go fully for Palermo and say, okay, fuck it, I'm actually willing to pay the 200 bucks, or no, it's not that much, it's well, I have to pay the 40 bucks anyway for this terrain, the full money. And then this would be 120 bucks that I have to pay if I go to Palermo on a standard gauge. But then I have a good connection to there, and Palermo, I think it actually upgrades already to 90. Yeah, so the green tile, the green Palermo is already 90 bucks, so that is super powerful. I definitely want to go there. At least I think so. Other option would be something like that, but I think that's not too great. So the main question is now basically, do I want to say, okay, I'm going to go... The cheap trains are the 4H trains. Then come the 6 trains. So the thing is, if I go now to Palermo with a narrow gauge train, I could not run a train from here, which is Girgenti. Oh, it's actually Girgenti. Girgenti. I could not run a train from here to here. Yeah, because that will simply take me... That would cost me basically 8 movement points, except that I use standard gauge. Then it would work. However, I could say, I'm going to go there in a narrow gauge and then place a token in Palermo. But I might be in a competition for that token with the guy from the Lilibeo, for example. And there can be only 1 more token in Palermo. So this is... That's already, yeah, that's again an interesting decision. Where do I really want to go? What do I want to risk here? Where... I mean, I could also go here and with a standard gauge, and there's a harbor here. It's also not too bad. Hell, I have no clue. Again, I'm going to roll a die here, and this guy is he's a little more conservative player. I've got my random personalities, and so I think, I think I'm going to go for only on one. I mean, how much money is in there at all? It's about, yeah, it's not even 300 bucks. It's only 260. So that means if I want to go to Palermo, I got to spend 160. That leaves 100 bucks in for a train. Well, I would have that money. I would not have the money for a dot. Oh, yeah, the dots are free now, actually. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I will be faster in Palermo. This guy seems to be closer. I mean, the thing is, where... Yeah, okay. This is the upgrade tile. So for now, this entrance to Palermo is blocked. Let's see. So yeah, maybe actually I will be faster, you know, because it will take me 1, 2, 3, 4 tile placements to get there, and him 1, 2, 3, and then he even gets here, or he upgrades Palermo. So it's also 4 for him, which means that yeah, because I operate before him, there's a lot of problems going on, right? But in theory, I'll be first there. But of course, someone else can mess with our shares or something. It's a pretty big risk, but for both of us, basically. Okay, because I think I'm a more conservative player, and if I go for Palermo, I don't make money with this company for quite a while. I think only on a 1 or 2. I will go directly here. Otherwise, I'm going to start operating somewhere down here first. Okay, that's a 4. So that means I'm going to use... yeah, I think I'm going to go with this then. And focus on this area. That gives me that gives me quicker money. So the thing is now, I got to spend 40 bucks for the upgrade here, or for the tile placement, the terrain cost. And what's interesting, if I want to upgrade this tile again, and that applies to all the terrain tiles, I have to spend again the money for the terrain. So anytime when I upgrade a tile, I have to spend the money for the terrain. And yeah, that's pretty special, I think, for this game. So what I decided to do, because I don't, you know, what I don't want to do is, I don't want to check if I consider upgrading a tile. I don't want to have to pick up that tile all the time to see what kind of terrain tip is underneath. That sucks. So what I came up with is, I want to do the following solution. I'm going to place one of these small cubes on that tile. And there are 3 different types of terrain, basically. We have the 40, the 80, and the 160. And of course, the no terrain. So that means I'm going to, for the cheap terrain, I'm going to use a yellow cube. For the medium terrain, a green one. And then a red cube for the most expensive terrain. In this way, I can remember the car. I don't have to check all the time what lies underneath the tiles. Okay, cool. And of course we place our marker here. That's it. I cannot pay out, so the share value drops. By the way, the share value only rises if you pay at least if you pay out at least your actual share value. So that's a disadvantage that you get for starting your company at a higher price. But I think it is still better than taking that massive risk of getting your getting your shares trashed to a value of 30 or 40 or something like that. I mean, of course, people can also trash your shares here, but then it doesn't drop that massively, right? It's just something like 75, or maybe if things go really wrong 63, but that's not such a disaster. So this guy's plan is to go to Palermo. You might consider placing a tile here first. But I think he's going to go for Palermo right away. Oh, by the way, I forgot to pay out for the private companies. So that means we have a revenue here of 25, and I forgot to buy a train too. Now that's interesting. Do I want to buy a train? I think not. I don't have to buy a train because I'm not connected to a route yet. If I buy a train now, well, I could run the train to this space here in the next operating round. But well, that's a tough call again. That would give me basically an income of 12 bucks. If I don't buy a train, I get a revenue of 25. However, if I don't buy a train, my share value will drop even further. And I don't think I want to risk that. I think I don't want to do that. So therefore, I think I want to buy a train with these guys. Okay, we have... I think that for now I'm fine buying a single train, right? I mean, these cost me 100 each. These are 200. They rust when the third train types comes out. And there are only, I think there are also 4 of these. Well, hard to tell. I think for now, 1 is good enough. I can still consider buying another one in the next operating round. I'm pretty sure I get another shot on one of these 4 trains. Yeah, I think I will. Okay. So there we go. We have our train, and now it's this company here, and we have here, this is a dual gauge, right? This is this white line indicates a dual gauge, different to this black line here, which is a standard gauge. Now, and here you can choose if you want to, if you run a train, you can basically choose, do you want this as a narrow gauge or as a standard gauge? And you also, if you make a connection. If you make a connection to a gauge, it always have to match the space that you come from. Okay, so I could not place now here, for example, a narrow gauge, because this the track basically connects to a standard gauge. The same thing is the other way around. I could not place a standard gauge here because we have a narrow gauge here. Here I can make a choice. I can place both types of gauges here. If I want to go to Palermo, I gotta spend at least 200 bucks. If I go with narrow gauge, that is too much for me. If I go with standard gauge, because this thing here costs me 160, that is too much. So I'm gonna go with a narrow gauge here, and Yeah, we're going to place this tile here. Now 1, 2. I'm not going to get to Palermo with a train anyway, but I can make the connection and then place a token here. So I think that makes sense. I'm going to place that curve here, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Got to spend 40 bucks because it's only narrow gauge, so I only have to spend a quarter of the cost. Okay, there we go. Cannot pay out. But I have to buy a train because there is a connection to another city. Okay, now it's a little more interesting. This guy, for example, he now has the money. Wait a minute, did I pay out all the revenues? I think I paid only... Yeah, I paid only his revenue. Maybe not even that. No, I paid his revenue, yeah. So this guy gets 30 bucks for the private. This guy gets 15. And he gets 5. So that means that this guy now has the money to start a company at 100. Which means if I now buy only a single 2 train, I might not get a shot for a second one. So yeah, that's the question now, right? Do I want to grab 2 trains or 1? That's a tough call. I mean, at the moment I can only run a single train. Of course, next turn I could place a token here, or if I place a tile here, I could place a token here for free and then run 1 train here and the other one here. But honestly, is that really something I want to do? This is not exactly a game where you want to... You know, this is not one of these games where you run your companies totally hard, risking well, kind of overheating them, right? And you got to be a little careful in this game because the trains are pretty expensive. Share value can go down, and it's also hard to find other companies to get you additional money into your company because there is no full capitalization and all that stuff. So it's a risky thing, and I'm really... I don't think I want to place my second token here. I really don't think I want to do that. It would give me 40 additional bucks basically. But do I want to run a second train or not? I don't know. So if I place a token here, I only have 1 token left. I want to get a token to Palermo. The question is, if I don't place the token here, where would I place my other token? How likely is it that I will be able to place that other token in an attractive space? Because I'm kind of isolated over here, and it's going to be not too easy to connect to these other spaces anyway. But I don't know, man. I really don't know. You know, again, I'm going to roll a die here. On a 1 to 3, I'm going to try to run that company a little harder. Otherwise, I'm going to play conservative. Okay, that's not a bad thing. So we're going to see one company a little more conservative. These guys say, okay, I want to make money. So they're gonna buy 2 trains right away. 2 4 trains. And that's it for this operating round. Now at that point, I think I'm gonna upload the video. Not too much happened yet, but I think you can see that in this game, yeah, the decisions are different, right? The fact that you cannot choose which company to start, the terrain cost, the different gauges, the partial capitalization. Yeah, the decisions are in this game are really pretty different to the decisions that you make in 1830, for example. Okay, so hope to see you in the next video or on lonesomegamer.com. Bye.